What's good, family? What's good? What's good, baseball family? Coach Ronnie here. People are rolling in. Nasia H joining. Studio Sophia Fitness Club's in the building. Clayton W's in the building. First and foremost, family, baseball family, I apologize for being late. Had a doctor's appointment and it went over. I had to rush back home. I hate rushing, but I was rushing. I got the keys right here. That's how much rushing I was doing to get here and talk 60-yard sprints with you guys, all right? So let's go ahead and move forward. What's done is done, right? So this is part 2 of a 5-part video series on how to improve your 60-yard dash, all right? Your 60-yard sprint. And the topic today, or the question today is, let's see, when should you begin training for your 60? When should you begin training for your 60-yard sprint? All right. My man Justin Hendrickson is in the building. Luis Gill is in the building. I see Luis on the regular. Good to see you, Luis. And we are on Facebook again as well. Shout out to Facebook. Shout out to, obviously, IG. All right. So, like I said, folks, the topic of today is, when should you begin your training for your 60? People are still rolling in. Shadiest one is in the building. Good to see you guys. All right. So let's go ahead and dive right into this thing. There is so much on the line these days for you guys that want to play in college, right? That want to play at the big league level, the professional level. There's so much on the line when you guys run your 60s, right? So it makes sense to be prepared. It makes sense to have a game plan in place. It makes sense to have a training plan in place. So we want to talk about, okay, you have a training program. Now, when should you begin this program, all right? So there's a couple of topics that I'm going to cover. I'm going to cover 3 topics today dealing with when you should begin your 60, all right? But again, 5-part series. This is part number 2, all right? So be cognizant of that. So let's go ahead and move forward. All right. So point number 1, in my opinion, there is no specific time when you should begin your 60-yard dash training. In my opinion, the reason being, because there's so many factors. I'm going to talk about this later. So many factors you can't control. D-Rack is in the building. Like I said, I'm going to talk about that later. But I've worked with guys for literally a year in preparation for a 60. Most recently, I worked with a younger athlete. Jackpot's in the building. We worked together for a month, right? And we only met once a week, all right? And you're going to hear about this young guy's story later during this 5-day presentation or training, okay? But my point is, there is no ideal time. Mateo Sanders in the building. There is no ideal time. You just have to make the best of the time you have, all right? Now, I'll tell you this. The time that I've experienced most frequently was 2 months. 2 months, all right? And so I guess if I had to pick the time, it would be 3 months. My ideal time, if I had to pick one, would be 3 months, because I know what I can do with 2, and if I could have that extra 4 weeks, that could possibly make a real difference in that athlete's time. So let that hit home, folks. There is no specific time, in my opinion, okay, because of the factors I'm going to mention later. But what you have to do is, you have to take action. You have to get out there and prepare at some level. Some of you might have a coach, some of you might not. But you have to prepare to put yourself in a situation to succeed, all right? So keep that in mind, point number 1. Point number 2, it ties, it pretty much ties into my first point, that there is no ideal time frame, there is no ideal time frame. Like I said, so many factors that John _knee7 is in the building. There's so many factors that you can't control, that we're going to get into in my third point. But, bottom line is, the time is what you make of the time, right? So I mentioned earlier, ideally for me, Um, in my experience, I've dealt with 2 months. That's the time period I've dealt with at the most consistently, 2 months. And so I said like I said, I'll add another 4 weeks to that because I know that could take us to the next level, and I know have an idea where I will stand with a 2 month training athlete. Okay, but again, when you meet with an athlete, when you have the opportunity to train with an athlete for 4 weeks, how often are you going to meet with this athlete, right? Those are things you got to consider. Where is this athlete along this athlete's journey? Training. Has this athlete done any speed work? Has this athlete done any strength training? These are all things you need to consider within that 8 to 12 week time frame. Okay, so from my perspective, it's all about what you can do with what you have, right? The time frame that we have in place, we have to make the best out of it. And I'm strictly talking on physical attributes at this time, right? But we also have to consider the mental side. If you read my social media posts, Iraq is in the building. Good to see you. If you read my social media posts on Instagram, you need to go check that out. It's a testimonial about one of my 60 athletes that recently ran their 60 and improved their time pretty dramatically. And I spent just as much time getting to know these athletes' personality and their makeup as I did teaching them mechanics, getting them stronger, getting them more mobile, more flexible, right? So the mental side of this 60 preparation is just as important. I'll say even more important than the physical side, because it all starts up here. I always tell my clients everything starts with a thought. You're doing some great things here, okay? Catch me, buddy. Catch my buddy. All right. Matthew Strum. We went to he's over on Facebook. We played high school baseball together back in VA. Shout out to Matthew. I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that. So let me get back to the point, right? So yes, and I lost track. So man, what was I talking about, man? Shoot. There's no ideal time frame. There's no ideal time frame for our training. Oh, the mental aspect. Yes, the mental aspect is just as important as the physical aspect. As I was saying, everything starts with a thought. Everything starts with your mind, man. And when you take action, a thought becomes a thing. Whether it's good or bad, a thought becomes a thing. And that's going to be the foundation on how you approach your training. So these are all the factors we need to consider within that time frame, which whatever that time frame is, whatever you're given, my point is make the best out of it. Okay, now my final point. I keep talking about factors that come into place when you are implementing your training program. There's things that we deal with every day. We all deal with every day. What I'm specifically referring to right now are scheduling, facilities, and the right coach. These are things we all have to consider. Scheduling. Everybody watching this live right now has crazy busy schedules, correct? Your schedules are off the hook, especially kids. I'm blown away how busy these kids are, I think for kids, I train in a very affluent area. So with that being said, these kids are in school to go to the best colleges in the region, maybe the country. So the classes are intense. As a result, their schedules are intense, right? So these kids, have problems getting here. Colton McCoy's in the building. It's a challenge for the guys that get here multiple times a week. I'll be honest with you. It's a rarity for me to have a client preparing to run a 60. It's a rarity for me to meet with him more than him or her more than twice a week. Rarely happens, folks, because everybody is so busy with their student schedule. I didn't even mention the parent schedule yet, right? So scheduling is everything. Then we have facilities. Raise your hand if you know of a place where you have 60 yards of space, of turf. Raise your hand if you have access to a facility that has 60 yards of space or 60 yards of turf. Folks, that is hard to come by. Now, what if you're training, and you might be able to go to an outdoor field right now, right? That's reasonable, right? That's expected. But what happens when it gets cold? Down here in Atlanta, the temperature's starting to decrease a little by little, day by day. So next thing you know, it's going to be 50 degrees out there. It's going to be 40 degrees out there. We can't run our 60s out there consistently in that type of weather. We have to move inside, right? So again, do you have the facilities to run a 60? Do you have the space to run a 60? So you have to consider, first and foremost, schedule. Then we have to consider our facilities, all right? And then you have to find yourself a coach. You have to find yourself a coach that can really help you. You don't want to go grab the first guy you come across online, or the first YouTube video. Aiden's in the building. Aiden, speaking of Aiden, shout out to Aiden. He is one of my clients, my 60 clients. He came to me just as a guy who wanted to improve, I say athletically. Is that a fair statement? Aiden, raise your hand. Give me a hands up if you agree with that. Lee Holt's in the building, right back at it. What's going on, Lee? But Aiden, you think it's fair to say you came wanting to become a better athlete? You didn't necessarily come to want to work on World of Dawson's in the building. Yeah, there we go. Came as an athlete. And would you mind sharing with the people your 60 results before the training and after the training? Would you mind sharing that with us? And also, I'm going to get off topic a little bit, but I have to shout you out on your accomplishments with your particular team, leading your team in Baton Average. Would you mind sharing that with the people? In other words, my man Aiden crushed it this year. Bottom line, getting straight to the point, he crushed it. 7.9 to a 7.9 to a 7.4, folks. And another thing, he's a perfect example. Did we actually one time formally train for the 60? And you can answer that question. Formally train for the 60. Did we do it one time? And if you're wondering, Aiden, what I mean by formally, like going to a track, actually running 60 yards, thank you, yes sir. No, we did not. We probably we were indoors the whole time. We met once a week, right? We met once a week. We were indoors the whole time, and the most our distance was probably a little under 20 yards, a little over 20 yards at Smart Tent. Shout out to Smart Tents. So my point is, that's a perfect example of getting it done, making the best out of your situation. And we didn't train that long either, folks. I don't know, a couple months, maybe a month. I can't recall exactly, but I know it wasn't a long time. So that's what we got with that time that we had available. So we just flat out made the best out of it. And that's what you have to consider, with your Facebook went out. Okay, it's back. That's what we have to consider. We have to consider scheduling. Gordy, what's up, man? How you doing? We have to consider scheduling. We have to consider facilities. And we have to make the best out of the situation. And that's what my man Aiden did. So shout out to Aiden. All right? But let's get back to the point of good coaching. Guys, you don't want to grab the first coach you come across.